So we have our next speaker here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. See
Thank you
you.
for
Bye
having us.
bye.
So we have DeSci World.
Yes.
Joshua, nice to meet you. How's it going?
Hey, yeah, really good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So today we're talking all about regeneration and helping to improve things. Decentralized science is like critical to sharing information. Do you think you could tell people a little bit about who you are, and then feel free to jump into your presentation?
Yeah, sure. Leon and Xavier, they just left. Hopefully they see this message. I was going to say that I'm sure we'll be reaching out to each other because there's going to be this big crossover, I think, between refi and DeSci. Conservation requires science in order for it to be effective, right? So I think there's going to be this big sort of shift between the refi finances that come in, but then utilizing DeSci in order to make the regeneration happen. So I'll just briefly introduce myself. My name is Joshua. I'm the founder of DeSci World. I have been in a number of DAOs over the past 2 years, some that you might recognize. I have been in Harvest Finance, a DeFi protocol, since September 2020. In fact, last year at MetaFest, I presented Harvest Finance on this stage. I think it was Penguin. I think it was you that was hosting it as well. I also was the community lead for the Assange DAO, which, for better or worse, achieved its goal. So I'm very happy to have been a part of that. Maybe not so promising recently, but another story for another time. So yeah, I'm the founder of DeSci World, and I'm here today to talk to you guys about DeSci World. So DeSci World is a community infrastructure platform for DeSci, and DeSci is decentralized science. So in the same way that DeFi uses Web3 tooling, crypto, blockchain, decentralization in general to revolutionize finance, DeSci is doing the same, but with science. Now, this is a huge topic. Obviously, science is massively broad. It has all kinds of things, funding, publication, the research itself, the way you handle the data, the way you transfer the data. Science is a massive, massive field. So decentralizing it takes decades of work, no doubt. So what DeSci World is trying to do, rather than tackle a specific problem, is we're actually trying to just empower the entire space, right? DeSci World is trying to bring the de-scientist to the fore, to empower them with networks, with grants if they need so, with the sort of resources to carry out their potential for revolutionizing science, right? One of the big things in DeSci that we are trying, DeSci World in particular, but the sentiment across the whole of DeSci is that gatekeeping within science is a big problem. It's very elitist culture on the surface and even underneath. It's like, if you want to get access to the best resources, the chances are you have to have been schooled in the best places, which, as we know, is largely a lottery depending on who you were born to or where you were born. So this idea that science belongs in the upper echelons of the elite is really, really dangerous. And depending on your belief systems, the past few years has begun to show a few cracks in this system, and decentralization is one potential remedy for fixing that. Penguin, did you understand what I meant by DeSci based on what I just said?
Yes, I did.
Good, cool. In that case, I'll move on. So I wanted to sort of show you a little bit about what DeSci World is trying to do. DeSci World has been in production for about 6 months, but we're actually doing a big sort of re-release, sort of new birth on the 1st of July, so in 10 days. In 10 days, we're going to launch our sort of revitalized product. We're going to relaunch our community infrastructure, and basically the fun starts on July 1st. So before that, what I want to do is give you guys a view of our website, just so you can see what it is we're about. It might make the next things that I say a bit more clear. So let me just share this quickly. Penguin, please tell me if the frame rate is bad, because I did adjust it, but I don't know if it's kind of gone back to its original settings.
Sure, I'll let you know.
Thanks. How are we looking?
Yeah, looks fine.
Cool. Okay. So yeah, this is DeSci World. We had an old website, which was very different aesthetic. This is a complete rebrand, a complete UX redesign. But this front page, this landing page, just gives you a brief idea of what we're about. It gives you a nice high level overview. Please, DeSci.world, go and view it yourself. That's the website. So you just scroll down here, get some information. And here, just going to briefly show you, you might have some interest in this. This is an NFT spotlight. This is one of our services, which I'll list, but this is one of our services. And this is basically to empower scientists through the use of NFTs. NFTs obviously are great for showing your visual data, showing your sort of artistic prowess, if it's somehow related to science. Obviously, this is a DeSci project, so everything's related in some way to science. And NFTs are used for fundraising, be it corporate fundraising, be it personal fundraising, be it fundraising for example, in the Assange DAO, we raised funds for a cause. Now, scientists in general are quite altruistic and tend to look for funds to raise for their projects, for their research, for some conservation target, for example. So what DeSci World is trying to do, alongside this in community infrastructure, is to have this NFT launchpad service for DeSci-based DAOs, DeSci-based projects to come along and help them to signal boost their NFTs, get as much attention to their NFTs as possible, get as much raise as possible. And the idea is that this will basically improve the NFT as a raise mechanic for the DeSci space, because anyone has tried to sell an NFT, it's quite hard. So, we're trying to make that easier for other people. Side note, DeSci World did try to sell an NFT. This is because the entire project was bootstrapped by my own personal funds. And we decided to do this in October when the market was nice. And obviously the last 6 months have been not the kind of time that you want to be funding a project. So we did the Microbes NFT as a pre-seed mechanic. There's all kinds of great benefits about that, which I can tell you at some point maybe. But you feel free to go to the DeSci.world website and check that out if you want. But yeah, so this is our NFT. However, this is a spotlight for other NFTs. So anyone with a DeSci related NFT project, come to us. We help them with the launch contracts, the minting contracts. We help them with community building. We help them connect with artists if you need artists, or just improve the project through our own network. So if you are a DeScientist and you're creating some kind of NFT project and you want a way to market it and get your name out there, please come and speak to DeSci.world. This is our roadmap. So our roadmap is being worked on more sort of succinctly, but I just want to briefly show you this end one, right? Q1 2023 marks the beginning of DeSci World's scaling ambitions. Now, I'm telling you this just because I want you to have an idea of what DeSci World might do at some point in the future, right? What we're trying to work towards. So we're thinking open DeSci World's first citizen laboratory, okay? Develop, integrate, and implement decentralized solutions for publishing, reviewing, reputation, academic reputation, for example, and more from the decentralized science community. So look, this is a pipe dream. We could open a citizen laboratory, but can you imagine, so you have an open space with the equipment required and the sort of legal safety requirements that you need to operate this laboratory, but people can actually just apply and come, and you don't need certain connections, such as, you don't have to have gone to Harvard or Yale. You don't have to work in a university or be studying in a university. If you have in your own life got enough skill, talent, and interest to actually go and experiment on something, then that would be the idea. So this is just like a broad vision of what we're trying to go for. We're trying to decentralize this very, very closed, gated scientific community as much as possible. Some people might fear that and think, why would you want to decentralize something so important as science? For us, innovation is stifled through centralization in general, but especially in science, when we don't know everything. It's pretty obvious that we don't know everything, but we behave like we do. And especially when you start adding corporate interests and corporate domination of scientific interests, that's when the truth starts to become a bit skewed in many ways. And also just, we accept things to be fact because we build these ecosystems around the science that we accept. But when we realize that maybe the science is a bit outdated in some places, these infrastructures that we've built are corporate interests, right? And there's a reason that they can't be displaced because it just ruins whatever the corporate interest is. And as we know, with the fossil fuel industry, for example, corporate interests win over everything. So, sorry. The first product, obviously, I just showed you one, is this NFT Launchpad. That's number one. Our principal product, our main product, however, is this. We're going to launch the app. Now, this is pre-launch viewing for you guys. So we're doing a lot of work on the UX sort of fixes and whatnot, but this is here for you to play around with before our official relaunch on July 1st. So this is a dashboard, and this is essentially an information aggregator for the whole of the DeSci space. So DeSci is rapidly evolving. It's very new. Lots of great projects coming in and doing all kinds of cool stuff. Some you may have heard of, flagship projects, and some you may never have heard of. So the idea is that DeSci World, you could come to here, be a part of our community and benefit yourself as a DeScientist, but also you can just come and use our free to use dashboard to understand what's actually happening in the whole of DeSci. So, it's very difficult to stay on Twitter all the time or stay on LinkedIn. Well, if you come here, you'll see this constantly updated table full of projects, DeSci projects that are innovating in the space. So the big ones that you might have heard of, flagship one here is VitaDAO. Lots of people know VitaDAO. So VitaDAO is quite unique in the DeSci space in that it has a token. Very few DeSci projects currently have tokens, and this just sort of shows how early the space is. So here, the VitaDAO logo, you get some information about VitaDAO, some clickable links, so you don't have to go and find them. They're all there for you. Contribution link, which links directly to their choice of contribution. For this is the DAO. White paper directly here, which is hosted, and direct interactions with their DAO proposals. VitaDAO, as you see, has a governance token, so it requires voting on their proposals. So you can directly interact with them here, get some information about the token, see the price, directly go and get the best trading link, which they provided, which is CalSwap. Recent developments via their Twitter. Very, very simple, right? Again, this is very, very early iterations. We're constantly improving the process with feedback, but this is just an example of how a page might look. To give you another view, something like Genomes DAO. This is a very interesting one. So Genomes DAO essentially democratizes the sale of your biometric data. So you give your DNA to, 23andMe or Ancestry.com. They take your data, they process it, then that's it. You don't get anything back until you get your piece of paper that says that you're related to someone in the past. Well, they actually take your genomic data, they sequence it. Maybe they sequence more than they give you the feedback for. So for example, you just get your sort of hereditary data, but they might get your genetic data, for example, whether or not you're prone to certain sicknesses or this sort of thing. And then they take that data and then they sell it. I always get this the wrong way around, but I believe Ancestry was just brought out by GSK, which is GlaxoSmithKline, a huge pharmaceutical company, majority stakeholders now at Ancestry. And the other one, 23andMe, are now majority owned by BlackRock and Vanguard Investments as a cooperative. So as you can see, this is your DNA. This is the founding, the building blocks of your body, of your entire being, and they are being sold to big business. So Genomes DAO is doing a fantastic job of sort of bringing that back. I'm not going to shill it too much because you should check it out. It's great. But basically, you do your DNA kits, and then you keep your data, and then you have control of your data. And someone who wants to use your DNA, genomic data, can pay you for it. Give the power back to yourself regarding your own DNA, as it should be. This is just a really good example of what DeSci can do, and highlighting some of the problems with the current system, corporate interest capturing science, which most people don't really understand. Like, I don't know anything about DNA sequencing. So for me to take the Ancestry test is not that big of a deal. But thankfully I have people around me who warn me of these things because, it's not great. But yeah, again, you can see the token, directly interact with the DAO proposals here. So what I would recommend you do is go and take a look. Remember, please, this is early. So if you have any feedback on it, come to our Discord and tell us. The Discord is on the tabs here. You can find some links to those. Just want to briefly show you the NFT stuff again. So again, this is the NFT Spotlight, which changes week on week depending on who's launching their project. And you can mint directly from our site here. So I'm just going to show you this. So this is our NFT, which you can directly mint from the site. Please go and do that and contribute. There's lots of great benefits for it. But yeah, so this would be, if you had your own NFT, this would be the minting page with some more sort of descriptions from the collection, and maybe some updates about the unique features of your NFT. So we're actually collecting, we have about 3 or 4 projects in waiting. So once we launch, we'll be doing every week a new project for us to launch, for you to come and sort of get an idea of what NFTs are in DeSci, maybe buy one. So yeah, that's the very early stage of our platform. In terms of what more there is to come, we have a peer-to-peer research funding platform, which is currently being built. And this peer-to-peer research funding platform, essentially, in DeSci, there's lots of stuff being done for research funding and decentralizing the grants process. And most of it's done much more professionally and sort of like much more technically required in terms of reputations and whatnot. We're working on it so that we're trying to make it as free as possible while still being, having integrity. The idea is that we're trying to sort of allow a place for long tail research to be funded and to be executed on chain, with a real infrastructure, but still to kind of keep it nice and open. This is the idea. I want to ask Penguin, please, if there's any questions in the YouTube chat, please let me know, because I had a few friends who were asking me about DeSci World, and I told them to watch this today. So I wonder if they are going to be asking questions or not.
Sure, I'll definitely keep an eye on that. I know I've got plenty of questions as well. So yeah, I'll see if they've left any questions for you.
Okay, cool. So this is our product, and I'm just going to briefly describe to you our service, which is actually, like, in my opinion, the majority of what DeSci World is actually about. Is this community infrastructure that we're building. So this community infrastructure essentially will incentivize people to join DeSci World. Once you join DeSci World, you can essentially sign yourself up to be useful to other DeScientists. So we're basically using this community as a service model that DeSci World is creating. So we have our community, which we gather from all over the world, and we not necessarily train, but we sort of like, get everybody's interests aligned, get everybody to understand what tasks might be required of them. And then you register. And once you're registered, other projects, be it a DeSci project, be it a traditional science project, be it an individual who has a hypothesis that they want to check, they can come to DeSci World, and then they can essentially rent out our very highly qualified, well-trained, well-gathered, globally distributed scientific community to help them with their tasks. Some very simple examples would be if someone wanted to test different soils at different coastlines around the world, well, they could come to DeSci World, and we could have these verified members through proof of humanity or some other verification process who show that they live in areas by the beach at their respective countries, and they can essentially get paid to carry out this research by, for example, collecting the soil and sending it off to a particular location. These sorts of things. Obviously highly experimental, but the idea is that DeSci World will become soon a fully decentralized DAO. Obviously, we have to do that slowly. I say DASAP, decentralize as soon as possible, but not straight away, because we don't want to wreck the whole project. But the idea is to go from what we are right now, which is incredibly centralized, to fully decentralized. And that would allow this sort of self-perpetuating community, right, where people come, they sign up, they get paid, and people come with service requirements, they sign up, and they get their service requirement fulfilled.
I think this is a perfect time to interject with the question from YouTube. So since scaling up phase, DeSci World is getting into the territory of citizen science. How do we ensure that some of the dangers related to DIY science are mitigated? And that was from YouTube.
Yeah, great question. So not that I'm trying to pass the buck here, but I want everybody to be aware that DeSci is a hugely collaborative space, just like DeFi is, right? The DeFi building blocks, where you take someone else's project and you build on top of it, and then you build on top of it, or you take someone else's idea and you rehash it somehow. DeSci World is very focused on this community infrastructure, and we're very careful not to spread ourselves too thin. We are not going to launch this peer-to-peer research funding marketplace or even begin to think about a citizen laboratory until the tooling is in place, the decentralized tooling is in place for us to do so in a safe manner. So the citizen laboratory obviously is more pipe dream, so it's a bit more complex in terms of how you verify that, but bringing that back, abstracting that back to the peer-to-peer marketplace, it's a very similar concept. You'd have some form of on-chain academic identity, some form of on-chain reputation system. mean, this could be as simple as Vitalik soulbound tokens. You send somebody a good review, it sits in their wallet. You send someone a bad review, it sits in their wallet. And then when someone comes to choose whether or not to fund your research or let you research their stuff, they can check your wallet and see if there's any of these good or bad reviews. It's a very, very simple system. But what I will say is that there are a number of DeSci projects right now working on this sort of verifiability of not just the person, but the research as well, taking it all the way back to source material. DeSci Labs is doing really great stuff with that. I don't know what stage of development I can talk about, but they're doing some really interesting stuff with backtracking and verifying research and researchers throughout the length of their career and also on each individual piece. So the idea is that we were going to wait, obviously, to allow, we don't want to put up a platform that allows dangerous DIY science to be done. The idea is to be permissionless and decentralized, but we still want to maintain some integrity and keep the platform actually usable. So yeah, the idea is that the platform, the marketplace in particular, is being built, but won't be released until we have, if it is released, it will be guarded. So it won't be permissionless. It'll only be certain people can contribute until such a time that we have this infrastructure in place that allows us to actually do it safely.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so I myself was extremely active in the sciences and studied bioinformatics and did genetic research and cancer diagnostic. So when people were sequencing their genome and stuff like that, I was always very, very hesitant as well because of them marketing and using our data. So it's awesome to hear you say that and hear about kind of the genome DAO. So I'll definitely learn more about that. What kind of science tools are being provided? Is it more like a tool generation or is it more data collection? Or is there kind of room for both?
So that question is the reason why we exist, because there's lots of stuff happening, but it's not so easy to find out what's actually happening. So some highlights are, for example, decentralized publishing, completely flipping the model of the publishing model. Those that don't know, typically, a scientist will apply for funding in order to get funding so they can sustain themselves whilst they do some research. Now, in order to get that funding, you tend to have to jump through certain hoops, unless your idea is great. But the majority of the time, the people giving you the funding tend to have their own sort of checks that you must adhere to, which means your research is basically being influenced by the money source. And then once you've done that, once you've done the research, which costs you time and effort, you then have to actually pay to publish your paper in most academic journals. For example, Nature is about $10,000 per publication. So if you're trying to do this independently, that's another $10,000 that you must pay. So most people don't do it independently. They do it through some kind of granting association, which again has these narratives that they're trying to push from their own, be it good or bad. It's not independent research. And then obviously you have to pay to use the services. If you try to use JSTOR or whatever, like, it's very expensive. So the idea for the publishing, for example, is to flip that on its head, so that the researcher basically gets paid to do research and to publish through all kinds of incentive mechanisms. You can picture, the more views you get on YouTube, the more money you get. Very similar sort of thing. So that's one good example, the publishing. Obviously, the research grant funding, you can look at VitaDAO. They're doing decentralized grant funding. They're also doing decentralized IP NFTs, which essentially allows you to leverage your own research IP, but via NFTs, via the blockchain. All kinds of stuff doing on the sort of foundational levels of DeSci. So the next presenter, Eugene, will tell you all about Scurf, and that's a really interesting way of how they're basically using the blockchain to do these researches. Other products, like I said, the DeSci Lab product, please go and check out their early stage reveal at ETH Amsterdam or DeSci Amsterdam. Really fantastic piece of kit. Long story short, PDF viewer that allows you to basically verify all of your sources, because all of these sources that you view tend to be PDFs. This is a PDF viewer that has a built-in verification module for all the levels of it. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah, that sounds like a super, super cool tool. talking about like kind of flipping the model on its head, what about kind of clinical trials? Right now, that's like one of the most difficult part for software as a medical device, as well as like actual like drug discovery and science, personalized medicine.
Mhm.
How can we, rather than companies kind of having to go out and find people for the clinical trials, is there a way that the kind of communities can kind of build their clinical trials and panels ahead of time as well?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. So I don't know so much about clinical trials, so I don't want to comment too much on that. But the concept of building your own trial group and then exporting that first is essentially, in a way, kind of what DeSci World is trying to do, right? The clinical trials is a bit more sensitive because it requires sort of like literal, it's your health. But this sort of like focus group or trial group formation in a decentralized manner, which can then be leveraged by companies that want to use these people, is something that DeSci World is actually working on right now, which is creating these groups of decentralized people for a particular scientific purpose, which an external scientific company will then come and pay for the service. They get paid for it, it's decentralized, and the company gets a nice focus group from not just a random distribution of people within a small county, but a random distribution of people from around the world, or a focused distribution if they need particular types of people who are signed up to our service, for example.
It also completely eliminates a lot of the HIPAA risk for companies, right? So it should make the data more usable, both for publishing as well as for security and liability reasons. Can you talk a little bit about the dangers of HIPAA for anyone that doesn't know about those?
No, I don't feel comfortable personally talking about that just because
Okay.
I don't want to sort of like say something in the next 2 minutes that doesn't actually fly. So if you don't mind, I'm going to skip that question.
Okay. Yeah, I will give my own personal experience as a developer working in the healthcare industry and say that public health information is vitally important, that it is stored both in software and in transit and encrypted. And, obviously anyone's health information is protected, and, it's very dangerous and costly if it gets out. So, yeah, definitely something to consider.
I mean, like
And
cryptography obviously lends itself very nicely to this encrypted data transfers and obviously all kinds of great data storage solutions. Protocol Labs, for example, are doing all kinds of awesome stuff with IPFS and whatnot. Uh, at the DeSci conference in East Amsterdam, there were some attendants who did discuss this, but there's the decentralized storage solutions that we're building right now are the same for DeSci and the same for DeFi. It's this IPFS-esque type thing.
very cool. Well, definitely sounds like there's going to be a lot more emerging in this in the coming years. So thank you so much for lending a platform for others to jump in and contribute to science in a way that is not coercive, is not prescriptive, and kind of really builds towards public goods for science. So thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. Can I just put out a call to action for people listening?
Yep, that was going to be my next thing. Please let people know how they can follow up and a little bit more about where your socials are.
Great,
Kind of stuff.
thanks. So please, the main platform is obviously our Discord. We're doing a lot of stuff through the Discord. Follow us on Twitter, which is at DeSci World. Please visit the DeSci.world website where you can find our Twitter and our Discord. There's all kinds of documentation that you can view to get some more information. But when you're at the Discord, say hi in the hi channel, and one of us will talk to you. And yeah, I hope that you will all pay attention to us for the July 1st launch, because that's when we're going to go with a big sort of bang.
Awesome. Sweet. I'll look forward to it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.